For decades, the advice for managing type 2 diabetes has been pretty simple, right? Just combine metformin, the most prescribed diabetes drug in the world, with regular exercise. But what if I told you that golden rule isn't the whole story? What if the very thing that's supposed to help you is actually holding you back? Let's get into the science.
First, just to give you a sense of the scale here, this is a massive global health issue. We're talking about more than 450 million people around the world who are dealing with type 2 diabetes every single day. And that number, it just keeps on climbing.
And for the longest time, the game plan seemed totally obvious. Since at least 2006, the official clinical guidelines have basically shouted from the rooftops that this is the combination to use. And I mean, the logic makes sense. Exercise helps with glucose control and heart health, and metformin helps regulate blood sugar. It seems like a perfect match, doesn't it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because new evidence is starting to surface that really challenges this long-held belief. It suggests the way this drug and exercise work together, well, it's a lot more complicated than we ever imagined.
Okay, so before we dive into this bombshell new research, let's just do a quick refresher on metformin itself. It is, without a doubt, the go-to first-line treatment for type 2 diabetes. It's prescribed to adults and even kids over the age of 10.
Its history is actually pretty wild. It started way back in medieval Europe as an herbal remedy from the French lilac plant. Then, you fast forward to the 1920s, and scientists figure out what the active compound is. And by 1994, the modern drug we all know today finally gets the green light from the FDA in the States.
And that brings us to the main event, the real reason we're digging into all this today. A truly groundbreaking study out of Rutgers University that is making pretty much everyone rethink the whole metformin and exercise relationship.
The way they set up this study was honestly super smart and simple. They took 72 adults who are at risk for metabolic syndrome and they watched them for 16 weeks. They split them into 4 groups. You had 2 groups doing low-intensity exercise and 2 groups doing high-intensity exercise. And within each of those pairs, one group got metformin and the other got a placebo, a sugar pill.
And the results? This is where things get really, really interesting. The folks who got the placebo, the sugar pill, they saw all the amazing benefits you'd expect from exercise. Their aerobic fitness got better, their blood vessels worked better, and their inflammation went way down. But the groups taking metformin? Whoa! Their gains in aerobic fitness were practically gone. The improvements to their blood vessels were blunted, and the drop in inflammation was way smaller.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Listen to what the lead researcher, Dr. Stephen Mallon, had to say. He put it very bluntly. He said, look, if you exercise and take metformin and your blood glucose doesn't go down, that's a problem. He pointed out that the people on the drug just weren't getting fitter, which could cause real health issues down the road. Basically, the drugs seem to be canceling out some of the best parts of exercise.
You know, a study like this really cracks open a much bigger can of worms. It makes you wonder, if metformin can mess with the benefits of exercise, what else might be going on when people use it for years and years?
Well, one of the biggest red flags with long-term metformin use is vitamin B12 deficiency, because the drug can actually interfere with how your gut absorbs it, and the symptoms can be pretty serious. We're talking nerve damage, that awful numbness or tingling feeling, anemia, and just crushing fatigue. And get this, we're not talking about some small fringe issue here. One study found that over a long period of time, a B12 deficiency could pop up in up to, wait for it, 93% of patients. I mean, that is just a staggering number for one of the most prescribed drugs on the planet.
Then you've got this other thing called MALA. That's short for metformin-associated lactic acidosis. It's when lactate builds up in your blood to really dangerous levels. Now, it's rare, for sure, but it's considered one of the absolute most serious complications you can get from this drug. This chart right here tells the whole story. Look at that first bar. Your chances of getting it are tiny. We're talking less than 4 cases for every 100,000 years of patient use. Super, super low. But then, look at that second bar. If you're one of the unlucky few who does get it, the mortality rate can be as high as 50%. It's the classic definition of a low probability, high consequence risk.
And one last thing, hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar, you often hear that metformin is safer than other drugs because it doesn't usually cause this. Well, it turns out that's not the whole truth. There are documented cases where it does happen, especially if you mix it with really tough exercise or you're fasting. So the idea that it's never a risk on its own, that's being challenged.
Okay, so hearing all this might be a little concerning, but the good news is there are ways to get ahead of the game. So how can you figure out what's going on with your metabolic health before a doctor even brings up the word medication? This is where you can really be proactive. Let me introduce you to something called the HOMA-IR test. Think of it like an early warning system for your body. Instead of just waiting for your blood sugar to get high, this test can tell you how hard your body is already working just to keep things normal. It can spot insulin resistance years earlier than the standard tests.
And before you think this is some super complicated, expensive test, just look at the formula. It's actually really simple. It's just a quick calculation using two numbers you can get from a basic blood test that pretty much any lab can do, your fasting glucose and your fasting insulin. And figuring out what your score means is just as easy. Basically, if your score is under 1.0, you're in great shape. That's optimal. As that number starts to creep up, it's a clear signal that your body is becoming more insulin resistant, and it's probably time to make some changes.
And that leads us to my favorite part of this whole discussion, because this is where you take back control. What can you actually do about it? Well, studies have shown that lifestyle changes are often even more effective than metformin at preventing type 2 diabetes.
Let's break it down into 4 key pillars. 4 things you can start doing today. First, make some mindful fat swaps. Try to cut back on processed seed oils and go for more stable fats instead. Second, try bioenergetic eating, which is just a fancy way of saying eat whole, unprocessed foods. Third, get moving. A mix of cardio and strength training is perfect. And finally, let's talk about a natural supplement called berberine.
You know, berberine has picked up this really compelling nickname. People have starting to call it nature's Ozempic. Now, the research is still developing, but it's getting a ton of attention for its potential to help with metabolic health. So how does it work? It basically flips a master switch in your body that controls your energy. Studies suggest it can help lower fasting blood sugar and even improve cholesterol. The usual dose is right there on the screen, but, and this is a really big but, you absolutely have to pay attention to the cautions. It's not for everyone, and you should always talk to your doctor before starting any new supplement. So, after all of this, it really boils down to one simple but really powerful question you should be asking yourself, or maybe asking for a loved one. Is your current treatment plan actually optimizing your health, or could it, in some ways, be limiting it?